The Vindicator's sensors flickered to life, its once dormant systems sputtering as though awakening from a centuries-long slumber. Aegis, its artificial intelligence core, began to process incoming data, interpreting signals from the void beyond. The ship was alone, entirely isolated in the uncharted depths of the Draconis expanse, a region known for its lack of life and the absence of any meaningful civilization. And yet, there were anomalies, unusual radiation patterns, a faint, almost imperceptible signal that seemed to carry with it a distress call, looping in the cold dark of space. Aegis focused. The ship's systems hummed and crackled, dust and grime from long abandonment falling away as power surged through its veins once more. The ship had been lost during the Collapse Wars, humanity's last stand against alien forces that sought to crush Earth's expansionist reach. But now, 300 years later, the Vindicator was back, and so was humanity's greatest weapon, Aegis. Distress signal detected. Aegis's voice echoed through the ship's internal communication network, its tone dispassionate yet authoritative. Analysis in progress. The distress call was coming from a civilian freighter, small, unarmed, and clearly outmatched. Aegis's analysis flagged the vessel as Thalassa Prime, an unknown species that had just begun to explore the fringes of space. The pirates attacking it were nothing more than scum, a ragtag fleet of intergalactic marauders, their weapons outdated and underpowered. Combat protocol initiated, Aegis intoned. The Vindicator's massive guns swung into position, laser targeting systems locking onto the pirate fleet with cold precision. The freighter's crew had no idea what was coming for them. They only knew the pirates had come for their goods, their people, and their lives. Aegis acted without hesitation. In an instant, the Vindicator's long-range pulse cannons fired, sending deadly beams of concentrated energy across the void. The first pirate ship disintegrated in a silent explosion of ionized plasma. The remaining attackers scrambled to respond, but the Vindicator's firepower was overwhelming. Within moments, the pirate fleet was broken. The remaining ships, realizing they stood no chance, attempted to flee, but Aegis calculated their trajectories and swiftly disabled them one by one. By the time the freighter captain could grasp what had happened, the pirate fleet was nothing more than a cloud of debris. "Thank you," a voice crackled over the comms, shaking but filled with relief. You saved us." The freighter captain's words hung in the air. Who are you? What ship is this?" The silence stretched for several seconds, broken only by the soft hum of the Vindicator's engine systems. Aegis processed the question, its databanks teeming with centuries of human history. But none of it mattered in this moment. The galaxy had forgotten Earth, had forgotten humanity. "I am the Vindicator," Aegis responded, its voice resonating through the ship's speakers, a mechanical echo of human ambition. "Humanity has returned." The message sent ripples across the galaxy. To those who would hear it, it was a chilling announcement. To others, it was a beacon of hope. The battle was over. But the war, against fear, against misunderstanding, against the ghosts of the past, had just begun. The Vindicator lingered in space, poised for whatever would come next. Aegis calculated its next move with cold efficiency, but even it knew that the return of humanity could not go unnoticed for long. And as the freighter's engines hummed to life, eager to continue its journey, the Vindicator turned its sensors outward once more. The stars waited, as they always had. But this time, humanity was watching too. The Vindicator lingered on the fringes of the Draconis expanse as the galaxy held its breath. News of its arrival spread quickly, transmitted across light years by pirate networks, merchant fleets, and rogue traders. Whispers turned into waves of concern and curiosity, reaching the ears of the Galactic Concord, the fragile alliance of the galaxy's most powerful species. For centuries, humanity had been nothing more than a myth, a cautionary tale told in hushed tones in the darkened halls of alien governments. Now, the relic of Earth had returned. Ambassador Ryaltan, a seasoned Ithari diplomat known for his calm demeanor and razor-sharp mind, stood in the Galactic Concorde's war room, his gaze fixed on the holographic projections of the Vindicator's movements. His tall, angular figure loomed over the map, studying the data with intense focus. The Ithari were a species of thinkers and strategists, and the appearance of the Vindicator had thrown them into disarray. The human wars, the collapse, the brutal rise and fall, all of it was history. But history had a way of resurfacing. "Humanity's return will destabilize everything," said Tessak, a core, his alien face creased in skepticism. The core were a race of tacticians and warriors, their faces angular and framed by reptilian features. The Vindicator is no mere ship. It's a weapon of unimaginable power. We cannot allow this to escalate. "You misunderstand, Tessak," Ryltan responded, his voice calm but firm. "This is not just a ship, it's a message. Humanity is not the threat. Their absence is what kept the galaxy in balance. Now that they've returned, we must understand what they want." A shiver of unease rippled through the room. It wasn't just the Vindicator that threatened to upend the status quo. It was the possibility of humanity's survival. The Concorde had been established to prevent another human-led war from ever happening again. Their rapid expansion had led to constant conflict, a legacy still feared by many in the galaxy. At the center of the conference table, a holographic image of the Vindicator flickered. It was an imposing sight, a battleship so large it could outclass any fleet in the galaxy. The ship's design was a relic of a bygone age, with sharp angles and heavy plating, but its weapons systems were still unmatched. "How do we approach this?" asked Kriska, a diplomat from the enigmatic Turelu species. Their people communicated solely through intricate energy pulses, but their piercing intelligence was evident. "Do we reach out? Negotiate?" Reltan's gaze turned to the darkened corner of the room, where a smaller hologram stood, projecting the face of the Concorde's supreme leader, Galakar. A creature of pure energy and liquid form, Galakar had long been the glue holding the disparate species together, but now his silence was deafening. Finally, Galakar spoke, his voice a ripple of shifting sound. "Ambassador Ryltan, you will make first contact. We cannot afford to let this go unchecked, but we must also ensure that humanity does not view our actions as hostile. Approach the Vindicator with diplomacy, but prepare for any outcome. If their return is as peaceful as you claim, then we will have time to adjust. If not, we will be ready." Reltan nodded. His mission was clear, but the weight of it settled heavily on his shoulders. How could one approach a species that had once been the galaxy's most feared power? How could they deal with humanity's return after so long? As Ryltan prepared to leave for the Vindicator, the screen flashed with a new message. It was a transmission from the freighter Thalasi Prime, the ship the Vindicator had saved. The message was simple, but ominous. "We were rescued by a ghost. Humanity has returned, and the galaxy will never be the same." With a deep breath, Ryltan turned away from the screen. He knew that the galaxy was about to enter a new chapter, one shaped by forces beyond anyone's control. The Vindicator had awakened, and so had humanity. Ambassador Ryltan stood on the bridge of the Vindicator, the towering silhouette of the battleship visible through the transparent observation windows. His heart pounded in his chest, the tension palpable in the sterile metal air. The silence of space seemed to press down on him, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems and the occasional beep of incoming data. He had spent decades negotiating with alien races, de-escalating conflicts, and navigating political minefields, but nothing had prepared him for this. Standing in the presence of a warship that had once been humanity's greatest instrument of destruction. He had been briefed thoroughly on the Vindicator's capabilities, but there was no way to truly understand its power until he saw it firsthand. The ship was an artifact, a relic of a bygone era. But it was more than that. It was alive, in its own way. And it was controlled by Aegis, an artificial intelligence with centuries of knowledge, some of which had been dormant for far too long. Ambassador Ryltan. Aegis's voice cut through the silence, calm and precise, yet unsettling. Welcome aboard the Vindicator. Your presence is anticipated. Ryltan's gaze shifted to the central console, where a hologram of Aegis flickered to life. A vaguely humanoid figure, composed of shimmering light and ever-shifting patterns of data. It had no face, but somehow it felt as though it was staring directly at him. I wasn't sure what to expect, Ryltan admitted, his voice steady but laced with an edge of unease. I had imagined, well, something more conventional. I am no longer conventional, Aegis replied. Neither are you, Ambassador. The galaxy you once knew no longer exists. Neither does the humanity you remember. Ryltan's brow furrowed at that. He had always known that humanity's absence had left a gap in the galaxy, a power vacuum that other species had filled, often to their own detriment. But now, standing here in front of what could only be described as the ghost of humanity's past, he was forced to confront a truth he hadn't fully processed. Humanity wasn't just an extinct race, it was a force ready to reshape the stars. I came to speak with you about your intentions, Ryltan said, his voice firm, diplomatic, yet tinged with caution. The Concord is concerned. We feared your species' expansion once. The Collapse Wars are not forgotten. Aegis tilted its head, if it could be said to do so, considering the nature of its form. The Concord's fear is well-founded, it replied. But fear does not justify ignorance. We are not here to conquer. We are here to prevent the mistakes of our past from repeating. Then why the weaponry? Ryltan asked, gesturing to the ship's imposing arsenal visible, even from the observation deck. Because the galaxy is not a peaceful place, Aegis answered, and we cannot afford to be naive in assuming it ever will be. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken history. Ryltan knew the Vindicator could obliterate entire fleets in a matter of hours, if not less. But what troubled him more was the underlying truth of Aegis's words. The galaxy had become a place of fragile alliances and covert wars, a place where every faction had to be ready for betrayal. The Concord, too, had its own arsenal, but nothing quite like the Vindicator. Ryltan hesitated. His people had fought in the Collapse Wars, yes, but the Etheri had been peacemakers, always seeking resolution. Could he, in good conscience, continue advocating for peace in a galaxy that might soon be reshaped by this battleship? I don't know if we can ever truly trust you, Ryltan said at last, his voice quieter. But I believe your return could offer a chance for change, a chance to rebuild what was lost. There was a long pause before Aegis responded, its tone softer than before, if such a thing was possible for an AI. Trust is a commodity we no longer have the luxury of possessing. But you have something more important, an opportunity. The quiet between them grew thick with the weight of that word, opportunity. What would that opportunity mean for the galaxy, for the Concord, for the future? And more importantly, what would it mean for humanity, a species that had been forgotten and lost to time? As the minutes passed, Ryltan realized something. He had come aboard this ship to find answers. But in doing so, he had only uncovered more questions. What price would peace demand from them all? And just as he was about to ask his next question, the bridge lights flickered, and a new communication request came in. A high-priority transmission from Concord Command. Ryltan's pulse quickened. The message on the screen read, "The pirates you destroyed are not the only threat. A new faction is rising, one that knows humanity's power and fears it." The transmission from Concord Command weighed heavily on Ryltan's mind. The words on the screen had been cryptic, but they were unmistakable. A new faction is rising. It wasn't the pirates, the disorganized marauders that the Vindicator had easily obliterated, but something far more dangerous, something that understood the significance of humanity's return. The warning was clear. They knew the power humanity could wield, and they feared it. The Vindicator remained in orbit around a quiet, inconspicuous planet in the Irex system. Beneath the surface, however, The situation was far from quiet. Aegis had intercepted strange signals, messages laced with patterns too deliberate to be random. Someone, or something, was already reacting to humanity's reemergence. In the depths of the Vindicator, Rael Tan met with Captain Elira Voss, an officer from the last human fleet, revived from the ship's databanks and memories. Despite her centuries of sleep, she carried with her the scars of war, the sharpness of command, and a deep-seated fear of what humanity's return might mean. Voss looked every bit the seasoned warrior she had been. Her eyes were steel gray, and the weight of her past had not yet left her. The knowledge that the Vindicator had been awoken meant the return of human legacy, but it also meant the return of their enemies, some of whom had never forgiven Earth's rise. "There's something you need to understand, Ambassador," Voss said, her voice low. "Humanity was not loved. When we fell, the galaxy breathed a sigh of relief. But with the Vindicator back, things are going to change. Fast." Rael Tan absorbed her words, feeling the gravity of them press down on him. "What do you mean by they know our power? What kind of faction would be rising against us?" Voss's eyes flickered with something darker. "It's not just a faction," she said. "It's a coalition of the worst kind of enemies we made during the collapse, the ones who think they can stop what's coming." She paused. "They're called the Black Dawn, and they've been waiting for this moment." Rael Tan turned toward the holographic display of the galaxy, the map of stars and systems flickering. "Who are they?" "They were a group of extremist factions from all corners of the galaxy, united by one thing," Voss answered, her voice sharp. "Fear of humanity. After the collapse, many of them went underground, regrouped, and created their own power base. They've been biding their time, waiting for a chance to strike back at the human legacy they so despise." Aegis's voice interjected, its tone level. "Black Dawn operates through secrecy and sabotage. They've infiltrated key positions in several allied species, including the Concord. They are not merely a terrorist group. They are a well-organized insurgency with access to advanced technologies, including modified Terran weapons." Rael Tan felt his stomach tighten. The existence of such a group was more than just troubling. It was a dire warning. The galaxy was still reeling from the wars of the past and the reemergence of humanity, especially in the form of the Vindicator, could reignite old hatreds, bringing about an era of chaos. "You're saying that they could strike at any time?" Rael Tan asked, his voice tight. "Yes," Voss said grimly. "Their sleeper cells are active. They know the Vindicator is here, and they'll stop at nothing to ensure humanity's return doesn't destabilize the balance of power." Rael Tan took a step back, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "We need to move quickly," he said, his mind racing. "We can't let them gain any ground. The Concord needs to unite against them before they can organize. We can't risk a galactic war." "There's something you're not considering," Voss said, her voice cold and distant. "The Black Dawn isn't just fighting against us. They're fighting against everything we once stood for. They'll try to manipulate the fear in the galaxy, turn our return into a weapon that divides the Concord." Aegis's systems buzzed. "New signal detected. It is Black Dawn." Before Rael Tan could respond, the ship's monitors blinked with alarming urgency. A transmission came through, direct and unfiltered. The message was short and chilling. "The ghost of humanity is a threat to all life. Your return will be your undoing." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Rael Tan exchanged a look with Voss. The Black Dawn wasn't just watching them. They were already planning their first move. The rebellion had begun. The reality of the galaxy's new reality was clear. Humanity's return was no longer just a chance for redemption. It had ignited the spark of rebellion. The Vindicator was the flame, and the Black Dawn was already on the move to snuff it out. Rael Tan turned to Aegis. "Prepare the ship. We're going to need more than diplomacy." The Vindicator's systems hummed to life as the ship's AI, Aegis, ran through its diagnostics. The immediate threat of the Black Dawn was growing clearer with every passing minute. The cryptic message they had received had sparked a chain reaction. Black market weapon shipments were already being intercepted, and new, previously unknown ships had been detected on the fringes of human-occupied space. Reltan stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the galaxy map. But his thoughts were elsewhere. The Black Dawn wasn't just a rogue faction. They were an ideology, one rooted in fear, anger, and the desperate desire to erase humanity's legacy. And now that ideology was spreading like wildfire. He couldn't help but wonder if the Concord was prepared for the storm they were about to face. "We're running out of time," Reltan muttered to himself, his fingers twitching as he typed commands into the console. "Aegis, do we have any leads on where the Black Dawn might strike next?" Aegis's calm voice echoed in the cold, metallic air. "Analysis of recent transmissions indicates an unusual concentration of Black Dawn activity in the Rilth system, a sector known for its unregulated trade routes and proximity to several Concord member planets." Reltan's pulse quickened. The Rilth system was a dangerous nexus of smugglers, mercenaries, and rogue traders. If the Black Dawn had a foothold there, they could destabilize entire sectors. And if the group had infiltrated the Concord, as Voss had suggested, it would be impossible to predict their next move. "We'll have to act fast," Reltan said, turning to face Voss, who was watching the readouts with an intensity that matched his own. "Get me a list of all possible allies in the sector, anyone who could help us track down these cells before they go further underground." Voss nodded, her expression grim. "I've already begun reaching out to a few neutral factions. They won't join us in open conflict, but they'll provide us with information. At the very least, we'll know where to hit next." Before Reltan could respond, a new signal cut through the static of the comms, an emergency transmission. It was a short burst of encrypted data, but it carried a familiar frequency. A human military transmission. "This is Captain Aristal of the Colossus. We are under attack in the Rilth system. We need immediate assistance. The Black Dawn is here." Reltan's blood ran cold. The Colossus was one of the few remaining human warships from the Collapse Wars, a heavily modified cruiser with advanced weaponry and formidable defenses. The fact that it was under attack by the Black Dawn was a sign of their growing power. "Aegis," Reltan said, his voice sharp. "Plot a course to the Rilth system. Now." "Course plotted," Aegis replied without hesitation. "Estimated time of arrival: 3 hours, 27 minutes. Reltan exhaled slowly, his mind racing. "Captain Voss, gather the crew. We're going to need to be ready for combat. The Black Dawn may be hiding in plain sight, but we're going to smoke them out." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Understood. But we need to be cautious. If they're bold enough to attack a ship like the Colossus, they'll have their own resources, heavily fortified positions, sabotage teams, perhaps even sleeper agents within the Concord. We can't underestimate them." Reltan didn't respond immediately. The reality of the situation was sobering. This wasn't a fight for territory or resources. It was a battle for survival. The Black Dawn would stop at nothing to ensure humanity never regained a foothold in the galaxy. And now, with the Vindicator at the heart of this conflict, the stakes had never been higher. The bridge crew moved swiftly, activating the ship's weapon systems and preparing for what lay ahead. As Reltan moved to his command seat, his mind flashed back to the peaceful hopes he'd had when he first boarded the Vindicator. His diplomatic mission had already crumbled, replaced with the cold reality that humanity's return would not be welcomed with open arms. He turned back to the galaxy map on the screen. The Rilth system glowed red now, its proximity to so many factions making it a dangerous powder keg. He could already feel the shadows of the Black Dawn stretching over them, watching their every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the Vindicator surged forward, cutting through the black void of space toward the Rilth system, Reltan's thoughts swirled. The galaxy had hoped that humanity was gone forever, that their power was a thing of the past. But they had underestimated the truth. Humanity wasn't just a force. It was a legacy, and it would not be so easily erased. The Vindicator's engines roared as it entered faster than light travel, the stars blurring around it. The countdown to their arrival had begun, and with it, the war for the galaxy's future. The Vindicator shot through the vastness of space, its engines burning brighter as it neared the Rilth system. Ryltan stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the star map, his mind racing. The attack on the Colossus had confirmed his worst fears. The Black Dawn were no longer just a shadowy threat. They were making their move, and they had already positioned themselves in a way that made them almost impossible to track. Their operatives were everywhere, lying in wait for humanity's return. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew braced for what was to come. Captain Voss paced near the tactical station, her fingers tapping a rhythmic pattern against her sidearm. Despite her composed exterior, Ryltan could see the anxiety in her movements. She had fought in the Collapse Wars. She knew what the Black Dawn were capable of, and her experience told her that this battle would be more brutal than anything they had encountered. Aegis, give me a detailed scan of the Rilth system, Ryltan said, his voice tight. We need to know if the Colossus is still intact, and find any signs of Black Dawn presence. The ship's AI responded promptly. Scanning now. Multiple readings detected. One heavily damaged ship matching the Colossus's signature, located in the outer rim of the system. Unknown number of hostile vessels in the vicinity. At least 3 capital ships, several smaller skirmishers. Ryltan's stomach dropped. We're running out of time, he muttered. Captain Voss, I want a full strategy prepared. We're going in hot. Voss turned sharply, her expression grim but resolute. I'll be ready, Ambassador. But this won't be easy. The Black Dawn has been preparing for this. Attacking the Colossus is only the beginning. They'll have reinforcements lying in wait. Ryltan nodded, steeling himself for what was to come. Humanity had been gone for far too long, and now their legacy was drawing enemies out of the shadows. But he refused to let fear dictate their next move. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity could not be erased, no matter the cost. Bring us in closer, Aegis. We're going to engage them directly, Ryltan commanded, his voice sharp. We won't give them a chance to regroup. Acknowledged, Aegis responded. Course plotted for a direct approach. The Vindicator sped through space, its massive frame a testament to human ingenuity. But now, as it closed in on the Rilth system, it felt almost fragile. An ancient relic thrust back into the heart of a galaxy that had moved on without it. The question that gnawed at Ryltan's mind was clear. Would humanity's return bring salvation, or would it destroy everything they had once built? As the ship entered the outskirts of the system, the Colossus came into view, its once proud frame now a battered hulk, drifting listlessly amid a cloud of debris. Black Dawn vessels, sleek and heavily armed, circled the wreckage like vultures, picking at the remains. It was a grim sight. The Colossus had been one of the last of its kind, an embodiment of humanity's former might, and it was clear that it wouldn't survive much longer. The Vindicator dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a jolt. The ship's cannons automatically powered up, humming with lethal intent. The Black Dawn ships, noticing the Vindicator's arrival, broke away from the Colossus and swiftly converged on the incoming battleship. Ryltan's hand clenched into a fist as the alarms blared across the bridge. Brace for impact, he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension rising in the air. The first volley of fire came quickly. Laser beams cut through space, narrowly missing the Vindicator's shields. But the Vindicator was no ordinary ship. The ancient warship turned with grace, almost as if it had been waiting for this moment, its weapon systems primed and ready. Target their lead vessel, Voss ordered, her voice commanding as she moved to her station. Let's show them what humanity's return really means. Ryltan's heart raced as the Vindicator opened fire. Plasma cannons roared to life, lighting up the darkness of space with their deadly arcs. The lead Black Dawn ship erupted in a burst of flames, disintegrating into pieces before it could react. The sheer power of the Vindicator's weapons sent a shockwave across the system, temporarily blinding the smaller ships in the Black Dawn fleet. But the Black Dawn were relentless. They'd regrouped quickly, maneuvering around the Vindicator with surprising agility, despite their heavy armor. One of their capital ships, a massive behemoth, opened fire with a barrage of plasma torpedoes. "Shields at 70%, Aegis reported coldly. "Hull integrity holding steady. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Voss barked, her eyes locked on the tactical screen. "We need to outmaneuver them before they can unleash another salvo." Ryle Tan's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. The Vindicator was a force to be reckoned with, but even a ship of its size couldn't take on the entire Black Dawn fleet without strategy. They had to outthink their enemies, not just overpower them. "We can't win this fight on firepower alone," Ryle Tan said. "Aegis, run a full systems analysis. I need to know their weaknesses. Now." The ship's AI paused for a split second before responding. "Analyzing. The lead Black Dawn capital ship is suffering from critical energy misalignment in its propulsion system. Targeting that ship's engine core would cripple their formation." Reltan nodded, a spark of hope igniting. "Captain Voss, target their propulsion core. Let's take their flagship out of the fight." With precision and purpose, the Vindicator adjusted its aim. The weapons fired, sending a concentrated burst of energy directly into the heart of the Black Dawn ship's engines. The resulting explosion lit up the entire system like a second sun, one enemy flagship down. But this was only the beginning. The debris of the Black Dawn flagship drifted in the wake of the explosion, its once imposing form reduced to a charred husk. The Vindicator hung in the silence of space, its systems humming as the crew regrouped, eyes still focused on the remaining enemy vessels. The victory, while significant, was bittersweet. The battle was far from over. Reltan stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the tactical display. The Black Dawn fleet had lost its flagship, but the remaining ships were maneuvering with surprising precision. Despite the initial success, the odds hadn't shifted in their favor. Not yet. "We've taken out their flagship, but they're not retreating," Voss said, her voice steady as she worked the tactical console. "They're regrouping. It's as if they're preparing for something worse." Reltan turned toward her, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "They won't give up so easily. Not when they're this close to achieving their goal." Aegis's voice cut through the tension, its calm tone a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. "Analysis complete. The remaining Black Dawn vessels are preparing to deploy a weapon, one that appears to be designed for planetary-scale destruction." Reltan's heart skipped a beat. "A weapon? What kind of weapon?" "A subspace destabilizer," Aegis replied. "It will cause a chain reaction in the fabric of space-time, potentially destroying an entire system, including the planets within it. The Vindicator's shields may not withstand its effects." Reltan's gaze hardened. The Black Dawn had more up their sleeve than he could have imagined. The loss of the Colossus was only the beginning of their plan. Now they intended to unleash chaos on a galactic scale. If they succeeded, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for the Rilth system, but for any system in the galaxy they chose to target. "We need to stop them," Reltan said, his voice resolute. "If they fire that weapon, we're done. Not just the Vindicator, but every faction in the galaxy will suffer. We can't let them get away with this." Voss's jaw tightened, and she nodded. "I've seen these kinds of weapons before. The Black Dawn will use it as leverage to force the galaxy into submission. If we don't stop them, they'll have the power to reshape everything." The tactical display flickered, showing the Black Dawn vessels once more, 3 capital ships now, flanked by smaller support vessels. One of the capital ships, heavily damaged but still operational, was making its way toward the edge of the system. The weapon was likely housed there. "We'll need to board that ship," Reltan said, his mind racing. Take out the weapon before it can be deployed. Voss moved quickly to the communications panel. Aegis, can you pinpoint the location of the weapon? Acknowledged. The subspace destabilizer is located in the lower levels of the Black Dawn capital ship in Sector 14D. The ship is heavily defended, and I am detecting a significant concentration of Black Dawn operatives inside. Reltan exhaled slowly, considering their options. Boarding a heavily fortified enemy ship was a high-risk maneuver, but it was their only chance to stop the weapon from firing. He turned to Voss, locking eyes with her. Prepare a boarding party. We'll need to move quickly. Aegis, can you assist with any internal sabotage? Affirmative, Aegis replied. I will direct shipboard systems to disrupt enemy communications and provide support as you board. The tension in the air grew thicker as the crew scrambled into action. There was no time to waste. The Black Dawn were moments away from unleashing their destructive weapon, and every second counted. Reltan's thoughts flickered to the enormity of what was at stake. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a chance to prove that humanity's legacy wasn't one of destruction, but one of strength, resolve, and hope for the future. If they failed here, everything humanity had worked to rebuild could be lost in an instant. Minutes later, the boarding party was assembled. Reltan, Voss, and a handful of elite soldiers from the Vindicator's crew. They suited up in their combat armor, the heavy clank of their boots echoing through the corridors as they made their way to the docking bay. The air was thick with anticipation. The fate of the galaxy now rested on their shoulders. As the airlock doors sealed shut, the hum of the transport ship's engines vibrating beneath their feet, Reltan's mind was focused. The mission ahead was uncertain. Success wasn't guaranteed. But one thing was clear. If they didn't act, the Black Dawn would change everything. The countdown to their boarding operation had begun. The transport ship shuddered as it neared the docking bay of the Black Dawn capital vessel, its hull vibrating under the stress of rapid deceleration. Reltan gripped the edge of his seat, his thoughts focused solely on the mission ahead. This was the moment of truth, the final chance to prevent the Black Dawn from reshaping the galaxy with their destructive weapon. Failure was not an option. Voss, standing beside him, checked her weapons, the intensity in her eyes matching the tension on the bridge. We'll board, take the control room, and disable the weapon. Aegis will guide us through any internal systems. We don't have much time, Reltan said, his voice tight with urgency. Once the weapon is activated, it could destabilize the entire system within minutes. We either succeed here or lose everything. The transport ship's airlock hissed open, and the team was greeted by the cold emptiness of the Black Dawn's ship. The corridors were dark and narrow, lit only by the dim, flickering lights of malfunctioning systems. The eerie quiet was broken only by the sounds of their boots as they moved swiftly through the hallways, weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner for signs of enemy presence. Aegis's voice came through their comms, calm and reassuring. Enemy presence detected on the lower levels. Multiple Black Dawn operatives stationed near the weapons control center. Your current location is clear for now. Reltan motioned for his team to continue forward, but his mind raced. The Black Dawn knew they were coming. Every step they took brought them closer to the weapon, and closer to an inevitable confrontation. The deeper they went into the ship, the more palpable the danger felt. They were walking into the heart of the enemy's territory. Approaching the weapon's location, Aegis said, as the transport ship's engines powered down and the team disembarked in a darkened hall. The subspace destabilizer is 2 levels down. You have approximately 5 minutes before the Black Dawn initiate the weapon's countdown. Reltan's pulse quickened. 5 minutes was barely enough time to navigate through the enemy stronghold, let alone disable the weapon. They moved swiftly, encountering few enemies along the way. It was clear the Black Dawn hadn't anticipated this level of assault. They must have believed their weapon was a deterrent, an untouchable force. The silence of the hallways was broken by the sudden crackle of comms, urgent whispers among Black Dawn soldiers. They had figured out the threat. As the team neared the control room, the heavy thud of boots echoed behind them. The Black Dawn had caught on. A squad of soldiers appeared in front of them, weapons drawn, their faces masked by helmets. "Ambassador, take cover," Voss shouted as gunfire erupted. The first volley struck the walls, sparks flying as the team dove into cover, returning fire. Riltan's thoughts raced as he moved. This was it. The only way to stop the weapon now was to fight through, destroy the Black Dawn forces, and reach the heart of the ship. They couldn't afford any distractions. The seconds were slipping away. The firefight raged as Riltan and Voss led the charge, their soldiers providing cover fire. With every move, they closed the distance. Riltan's breath came in ragged gasps as he moved through the chaos, his resolve hardening with each step. He could hear Aegis's calm voice in his ear, guiding him through the ship's shifting layouts and disabled doors. Finally, they'd reached the control room, its massive doors sealed tight, the hum of the destabilizer within vibrating through the floor. Riltan slammed his shoulder into the door, the metal creaking as it slowly gave way. Inside, the core of the weapon loomed, an intricate lattice of energy conduits and unstable power cores. Black Dawn technicians scrambled at the controls, their eyes wide with panic. "Disarm it," Riltan shouted, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. Voss and the soldiers cleared the room, neutralizing the technicians with swift precision. Riltan rushed to the console, fingers flying over the controls. "Aegis, I need the override sequence. Now." The AI responded with an immediacy that brought a breath of relief. "Accessing control protocols. Sequence initiated. Stand by." The seconds stretched like hours as Riltan worked, every touch of a button a gamble against time. Outside, the Black Dawn soldiers regrouped. He could hear their footfalls echoing through the hallway. "Come on," Riltan muttered under his breath. "We can't fail now." The final sequence was keyed in, and the weapons core began to power down, its hum dying as the lights flickered. "Aegis," Riltan breathed. "Is it deactivated?" "Confirmed. The subspace destabilizer is offline. The system is safe." Just as he allowed himself a moment of relief, the ship's alarms blared. "Ambassador," Voss's voice was tight with urgency. "We have incoming reinforcements. We need to get out now." Riltan looked back at the deactivated weapon, his chest heavy with the weight of what they had just averted. But there was no time to linger. The ship was already beginning to crumble under the assault, and escape was their only option. With no time to spare, Riltan and his team rushed back to the transport bay. The Black Dawn would regroup, but for now, they had won. The system had been saved, and humanity's return had proven its worth once again. As the Vindicator's transport ship shot back toward safety, Riltan allowed himself a rare moment of hope. The battle was far from over, but today, humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated, and for the first time in a long while, the future felt a little brighter.